So while I am checking everybody in, I want to say hello and thank you all so much for joining us. We are all looking forward to I'm sorry, I'm doing three things at the same time. I'm looking forward to a really exciting discussion. And this is the first panel discussion I have ever hosted. And if this goes well, I hope to have more of them. I honestly think that we all need to get together and chat at least once a year just to keep up with each other and the whole industry. I know that we don't all live in the same general area. So sometimes you only see people when you're at a conference or something. Um, so that's one of the pluses of 2020. Um, we've learned to use Zoom and other types and Snapchat and uh, Google Google meetings, which is terrible. Don't even try. Anyway, all of these, it's really awful. So all of these new technologies. So that is the plus of 2020. Um, One of the pluses of today is I'm seeing faces that I have not seen in a year, and I miss you all. My gosh. So I know that my glasses are glaring in the spotlight, and I hope to be able to take them off as soon as I'm able to just read. Okay, so, oh, it's 3:04. So we're going to get started. So glasses are off. So that means it's official. Here we go. So welcome everyone. And if you don't know me, my name is Audie, your host for today. And this isn't working. I'm so sorry. And this is the State of the Belly Dance panel discussion. So today, of course, we're going to discuss a lot of the important issues that have been affecting the belly dance community since it's been such an amazing and dynamic and interesting and scary and wonderful 2020. So if I just want to make sure that all of the attendees are muted and your video is off. And so if you go to gallery view, you should be able to see all of the panelists, including myself, in a little checkerboard pattern there. When each person is just speaking, the hope is that you'll just be able to see that panelist and no one else. So just waiting a second here to see who else is checking in. We've got a really big crowd. This is amazing, wonderful. So I'm going to continue on then. Okay, so today we have a panel of very notable people in our community, and I'm going to go one by one and just sort of introduce everyone. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. I'm going to be your host today, and my name is Audie. I'm a performer and instructor of North African and Egyptian style belly dance since 1996. I've taught and performed across the country. I've produced showcases and events, and I'm the artistic director of my troupe, the Daughters of Het-Haru. I also offer at the moment, I'm offering recorded and live classes online. Additionally, I'm a holistic practitioner and herbalist in the Wise Woman tradition. And I'm going to go to our next panelist, who is Sarha Abdul. Hi. He is 27 years old and a fusion belly dancer, a belly dance sensation, and he is a sensation, believe me. He's performed at the United Nations, a representative of China. He's an artistic director of Audiesbellyrhythm, and his motto is to educate people of the magnificent power of movement without regard to age, orientation, size, or shape. And we'd like to welcome him. Our next panelist is Tashira Wadiya. Wave, say hi. There you go. There she is. Okay. And Tashira has been a professional dancer, instructor, and performer of Middle Eastern dance for over 40 years. She has performed at prestigious venues nationally and internationally, and presently teaches in Toms River, New Jersey. And that's our Tashira. Next, we have Tariq Sultan. Wave? Did you wave? Okay, there he is. Okay. Tariq has started his study and research into the dance in the late 1980s and traveled to Egypt. He began his teaching career in the early 90s. He's taught and performed across the US and internationally. He continues to teach and perform regularly in the New York, New Jersey area. Okay. Moving on, we have Maria Naja Richardson. Hey, she is originally from New York and now based in New Jersey. She is the owner of Hamsa Dance and Fitness, director of Tribe Hamsa, and founding member of the Manhattan Tribal. Maria has been teaching since 2003 and became a certified Fat Chance, otherwise known as ATS instructor, in 2009. She has performed and taught globally. Moving on, we have LiliRosa. Wave, LiliRosa. LiliRosa is a North African-inspired traditional Egyptian-style dancer from Harlem, New York. Has worked as both a national and international performer, lead dancer, choreographer, and producer for almost 20 years. She is also judged and competed as one of the original producers in the Long Island area. She's been featured in both newspaper, magazine, books, and about dance, and has been a guest on TV and radio. She also produces calendars featuring belly dancers of color and has her own studio, multi-genre belly dance studio for 5 years. Currently, she is engaged as an integrative health coach, bridging dancers' actions with their goals as honored and is honored to participate today. And we are honored to have her. And our next panelist, and last but finally, definitely not least, Angelique has been dancing for over 2 decades. She is a level 5 certified in the Salampur format, incorporating body skills she's learned from her Black belt martial arts, artistic skills from her work as a professional photographer, analytic skills from her computer science degree. She offers a unique and multifaceted approach to movement and musicality. And we'd like to welcome all of our panelists here today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Okay, so we're going to get right into our panel discussion, and I am just letting in our last, oh dear, come along. Okay, I just got out of the view that I really want to be in, and excuse me 1 second while I get back to that. There we are. Okay. And letting in one other person. Okay, so we're going to get right ahead, go right ahead. And we're going to start off with Sarha Abdul, I'm sorry. So I believe we can go into speaker view so we can just see, okay, it's me speaking, so that's why you see me. But so your questions, Sarha. Firstly, how do you feel the LGBTQ community could better be represented in the belly dance community?
Well, I had to think very deep about this question. First and foremost, before I get into answering it, I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be able to speak about this. It was really humbling to know that, you know, I was included with people like LiliRosa, like to me, and Tashira Wadiya. So for me, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that. As a youth that represents the LGBT community, I think that with any community, first, we must help ourselves and we need to start fixing from the inside. Um, there's a lot of things and components that need to be implemented with our LGBT community, more or so the transgender community that are doing belly dance. They may not get the same amount of support as maybe a gay belly dancer or lesbian or bisexual. So with that being said, I think that with it, before we ask other people to give us inclusivity, we must include each and every one of our brothers and sisters. After we find that inclusion, I think that we have a whole month that represents our civil rights movement with the LGBTQIA plus community. I think that including us into it would probably be able to be celebrating us. I mean, there may not be many of them in the Arabic community, but there still are, and they should be celebrated just as much. So I think that if we can celebrate all types of different cultures, backgrounds, that we could be able to celebrate the LGBTQIA plus community. Do I say that this is something that's going to change today to tomorrow? Most likely not, but it's something that we can step forward. And I think that because of things changing and generations changing and things opening up to be more accepting to the community, it gives them a great hope that things will be better.
Great, great. Thank you. So following up on that, what about men in the belly dance community? I know that obviously there are very few of you. How do you feel that you can be better represented?
Honestly, the answer kind of has the same thing.
Mm.
Men need to start supporting men belly dancing. That is important. There's not a lot of us, but instead of us comparing each other or finding each other as competition, I think that we should think about each other as brothers, and to be able to really understand each other aesthetically, so that we could be able to have a better community as men. Now, men in inclusivity for belly dance, I do think that there's certain things that can be worked on. One of the awkward things that I usually have is I'm usually the one of, if I haven't performed with, the times that I have performed with a man, which was Tariq Sultan, I when I'm by myself, often so I'm put in a dressing room with women, or I'm put by myself in like this weird room. So with that being said, I really, I think that we should just be a little bit more inclusive on how we treat the male belly dancers in the backstage. I understand that the majority of belly dancers are women, but times are changing. Look at me. Look at Tariq Sultan. We're here, and we're here to represent the belly dancing community with a different aesthetic. Of course, masculine energy, we have more of a different demanding or a different kind of texture to our movement. But with that being said, I think that that should be appreciated. And I do think that there's so many different kinds of us. I mean, we have people like Tito Saif, and then we have people like Igor Kishka. So they're very different opposites of dancers. One is representing a more masculine side, and one is representing more of a feminine side. Accepting each of them and accepting them as men overall is what's most important.
So also, keeping in mind how male dancers are treated in other genres, they usually tend to be like the background or the partner of whoever the ballerina is, or, you know, the one who lifts up, you know, the prima ballerina, and they sort of make up the background.
Mhm.
So I mean, how do you see it, us in the belly dance community, not like putting you guys in the background and saying, oh, he's the guy, or he's the one whose lap we're going to sit on and feed grapes, or something like that.
Um, well, in the belly dancing community, I think that we have, since we are a rarity in a sense, I do, well, not anymore because there's a lot of men now, I feel.
Mm,
But in retrospect, I think that we are kind of like, we have an expectation. When someone sees a man on a playbill that is about to perform in something that may not be realist, like I guess idealistically in the stigma of being a part of belly dance, when you look at that, you kind of are more interested into seeing what the man has to offer, which applies a little bit of pressure
mm,
because, you know, we really want to represent the community to the best of ways, but also not forget who we are and what we represent for the community. So
mhm,
I think that there is a certain expectation that comes with being a male belly dancer dancing in a set, especially if you have a good reputation of doing great performances,
mm,
following through with that and continuously doing that in the community. I guess that's just the expectation that they come with.
right.
But I don't think that it's anything that should be talked bad about or changed because, to be honest, people are always going to have expectations of people. I mean,
Right.
after me seeing, you know, Tashira Wadiya perform, when I see her perform, I'm like, my jaws dropped all the time. And when I see her all the time, my jaw's gonna drop because that's just the expectation. So with
Right.
that being said, I think that, you know, each and every one of us, we have an expectation, and some of us have a higher expectation than others.
Mm,
We have a higher responsibility because some people expect us to move a certain way or to be a certain way,
mhm.
but we're just trying to, yes.
Right, right. So let me open it up to the rest of the panelists. Did anyone want to speak on that?
I do. Um,
Who is
this is
this?
Naja.
Hi,
Naja.
Naja. Okay.
Wanted to mention, I think one of the things that people think about when they think of Fat Chance belly dance is just the women. We have some groups that are men all across the world, from as far as Canada to China and everywhere in between.
Mhm,
And they started to become the more premier people and most innovative people in our community, and leading their own troops, creating their own formats,
mhm.
and actually teaching the genre in their dialect.
That's
And
fabulous.
it's really good to see, just showing the change in the industry
Mhm.
and in the genre.
Wonderful, wonderful. Tariq, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of things. We have to differentiate between the different arenas. I think within the dance community itself, we've come an awful long way in terms of male representation because, like, when I started out, we were still having debates as to whether or not men were physically capable of
Mm,
dancing, you know?
mhm,
And I think over the past 20 years, we've seen a lot of men participating as teachers, as performers. Definitely, it helped when you had people like Tito come along
mm,
the scene, like in 2005, that opened up the way for a lot of people. And of course, myself, I was always very vocal about the fact that men do have a place in this dance. Outside of our own community, I think that's where we find more of a challenge. It has been for me,
mhm,
um, dealing with the general public and realizing that the dance does come from a certain culture, and they do have certain attitudes as to what they consider to be acceptable male behavior. The way that I have gone about handling that is pointing out the fact that the foundational dance that the performance comes from is a social dance, and it's engaged in by people of all sexes and all ages. But even with that being the truth, there's still pushback from certain individuals within those communities, like the Egyptian or Lebanese community. And we have to realize that they're not a monolith. You know, there are people within those communities who are very detached from the reality of their own culture, you know, because they've grown up in certain social circles where the thing that people aspire to be is as Western and European as possible. You have other areas where people are very conservative from a religious point of view. So even women performing is not acceptable. And then you have the people who are living in, I guess, you know, if we're talking about, well, they're coming from a more traditional background, working class, where they are connected to their culture. So for me, it was always a catch-22 because it's on the one hand, you're fighting against a certain level of homophobia. Because when you come out, they hear male belly dancer, they expect you to be the personification of the worst stereotype imaginable, you know, which is something that they really, you know, recoil from. And, you know, when I came out, I just wanted to dance in my jeans and my t-shirt. People were like, no, if you're going to do this professionally, you have to have an outfit. But herein is the catch-22. It's like if you're dancing socially, for the most part, in regular attire, no problem. But you come out with a shiny costume, problem. You know?
Right.
But then now you're dealing with the fact that for the most part, you're going to be performing for an American audience, and they want Aladdin and Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. But in Egyptian or Lebanese, they want it as simple as possible. So when you look at someone like Tito, for example, his outfit is very plain, very simple, you know? But I was able to gain a niche for myself because I didn't play into their fears. And I'm just a guy who's doing the same thing that a lot of y'all do at home. I'm just dressed better, you know? But even with that, it's still an uphill battle.
Right. Okay. Thank you both. Thank you all for your responses and everything. We're going to go on to the next person. And please, if you have a question that you want to put in the chat, please do. We'll have a little, I'll be able to go through the questions at the end if we have time. But I just want to make sure that everybody here gets a chance to speak. And so our next person, our next panelist to speak is Tashira Wadiya. And so your first question, drum roll please. Your first question.
Been around for a very long time. It's a sensual dance. It's a beautiful dance. And for all of us that want to feel beautiful and love music and love the way the music talks to us, I think I can be feminine. And I'm a 60s kid. So rah. Fight myself through the glass ceiling, but I'm still going to belly dance and I'm still going to show what I've got until I can't do it anymore.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great. So would anyone else like to weigh in on that? What do you feel that the community is shrinking, or is it just more dispersed? What are your thoughts, panelists? No? Yes.
I'll chime in.
Okay. Okay.
So I agree with a lot of what Tashira had said. I will just add that, I have two daughters, and when they came along, I had this fantasy of them being in class with me and me being like Gladys Knight and the Pips. And let me tell you something, that did not happen. Neither one of them really want to participate. And, both of them have different expressions of who they are. One of them is a little bit more aggressive. One of them is a little bit more girly, but for each one of them, belly dance is not cool, right? And I think what it is for this younger generation is that they have the, kind of Orientalist kind of archetype in their head of what that niche is of a feminine belly dancer. And given all that we're going through from a societal and cultural perspective these days, that's not really something that people want to embrace, right? In addition to that, I think that, everything that we get is always a blessing and a curse. And in the age of the internet, I think, so I've been dancing since 1997. And when I started, there was no YouTube, there was no internet. I bought VHS tapes of every single person that was out there. I have, between VHS and DVDs, I probably have about 200, right? And as most of you on this panel remember, those things were $50 a pop, right? And that was all that you could get, right? And the environment that we grew up in back then was so different. And like Tashira was saying, right, you had your restaurant gigs and you had your musicians, and it was a community affair, and it was an event, right? And now I think that things have shifted and we are performing more for each other than we are for everybody else. And I think as a result, that's one of the reasons why we're not growing our base necessarily, because when we want to communicate, when we want to post a video, who do we have in mind? We've got each other in mind, right? So I think there has to be a shift, and we have to recognize that it's our local communities, and everything, as far as I'm concerned, everything is local, right? We can shout on the internet all day long, but at the end of the day, it's who are the people that you are seeing and touching on a day-by-day basis. Right. And getting those people to understand the beauty of our craft and to understand that it's so much more than what they've seen on TV, right? I think that's how we're going to educate people. That's how we're going to inspire people. And that's how we're going to grow back into, something really popular.
Right. Great. Thank you for that. I know there were a couple of people who wanted to weigh in, but in the interest of time, I'd just like to roll forward, and maybe we can come back to that in a little bit. But thank you both for those, for your answers and your input. And, oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Okay. The thing of it is, see, I'm trying to be vain to do things without my glasses, which is not working. So sorry for the glare. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next panelist, and that is Tariq Sultan. And there he is. Okay. Hello, Tariq. So, so your first question is, what are your thoughts on other dances being fused with traditional belly dance?
Well, I don't think that there's any problem with that. The only issue that I have is when people try to pass off fusion as being, folkloric or, traditional. But fusion has been happening for a very long time. I mean, if you look at a lot of those black and whites from the golden era, a lot of those dancers were doing fusion. Tahia Carioca, she got that name because she was popular for putting, a popular Brazilian dance in her routine at that time called the carioca. If we look at a lot of the dances that Samia Gamal did, A lot of it was fusion, so it's nothing new. The Mahmoud Reda troupe, what they were doing was a fusion. You know, a lot of people don't realize that what he and the Komeya troupe were doing was not traditional folklore. It was theater dance. It was based on a little bit of ballet, a little bit of ballroom, on Egyptian themes. So as long as people are honest about what they're doing, it's valid. You know, just call a thing and be honest about what it is.
Right. Okay. Okay. So that sort of rolls right into the next one. So do you feel it's what is an essential element for a performance for you to be considered belly dance or true belly dance? And is there such a thing as true belly dance?
Well, I like to go back to the cultural context because they don't call it belly dance. We have to remember that,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So there's two levels to this. There's the foundational dance, which I alluded to earlier, which is the social folk dance that everyone does, right? The
mhm,
Raqs Baladi. And then out of that form evolved the performance style that we know, which is Raqs Shar'i, you
mhm,
know? So, yes, there definitely is, in both cases, a very distinct and definite style of dance. It has its own movement vocabulary, its own aesthetics, its own cultural and historical background. So that is very real. Now, what elements do I feel are essential? For me, what gets my attention, and I'm inspired by the traditional Egyptian style dance, whether that's Raqs Shar'i or Raqs Baladi. What typifies to me the Egyptian style is that I like to say it's an emotional expression through movement. So it's like you're
mhm,
connecting to the music. The music is eliciting an emotional response, and you are interpreting that with your body. You're allowed to express your personality, your sense of humor, your charisma. Whereas I think in the American form, like quote unquote, what we call cabaret, it can be very clinical, and the emphasis is on technique. You know, like look at what I can do rather than
mhm.
look at who I am and what I'm, bringing across. And I'm more attracted to the Egyptian style because when I see someone dance, I want to see your spirit. I want to see you connecting with the music. Even within Egypt today, I think there's a lot of dancers who are getting away from that because they're trying to compete with these Western dancers, and a lot of these Western dancers are being employed in Egypt, I guess, because of novelty factor. And I'm seeing this overemphasis on technique and look what I can do, you know?
Mhm.
So you've got a really beautiful piece of music and there's a very melodic passage and the dancer's got a drummer on stage going doom tack, and you're completely ignoring like, sweetie, that's a nigh. This is not time for popping and locking. It's time to get into those
Right.
melodic, soft circular movements and really dig down deep and bring out that emotional quality.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
just because it's happening in Egypt doesn't mean that it's got a green light as far as I'm concerned. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know?
You sort of bring to mind, I was doing a performance with and there was another dancer there and who I didn't know. And after she performed, the manager said to her, she says, "Well, you dance with an American accent."
Hmm.
And I was crushed for her. Like, oh my gosh, that's pretty horrible to say that. It's like, oh well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really worked at that. So so dancing with an Egyptian accent, I imagine. really takes some diving into not just technique, but the culture.
Yeah, but I think that people, okay, the number one complaint that I hear from, Arabic speaking people, whether they be Egyptian, Lebanese, whatever, is they don't they don't hear the music. They don't feel the music.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're so busy on, trying to layer, all these different combinations that they're not listening to the music, they're not feeling it, they're not expressing it.
Mm-hmm.
When the Egyptians go to see a dancer, they're not looking to see who's got the best shimmy and who can layer an undulation on top of a shimmy, on top of a hip drop, and, a backward flip into a split. Like they already come with the understanding that you know how to dance. What I want to see is your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what makes you different than everyone else. And we've lost, I think that even, as again, I'll say it, Jersey City and our ambulances. I'll say it again. I think we're losing something even in Egypt because the era of the star dancers is really gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first started going to Egypt, you could see a star dancer every night of the week and they were all different. And now the, what do you call it, the festival circuit, right? It's been a blessing and a curse because it's been a blessing in that we can all come together from all over the world and learn from all these different people, but it's become run by a very small handful of people who've come out of from underneath one particular artist. And so what we're seeing a lot is manifestations of that one particular artist's feeling, right? It's not like you would go see Sohair Zaki, who is different than Fifi Abdu, who was different than Nagwa Fuad, who was different than Lucy. They all had that common denominator, but they were all different. And now it's like not only do you have that singularity happening in Egypt, but now you have everyone trying to compete with the Russian dancers who are coming from a totally different headspace and aesthetic. And I'm sorry, but a lot of them, they just really don't connect with the music.
Right, right. Totally understand that. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this?
I want to jump in.
Yes.
I first and foremost, I just want to talk about go rear back into the fusion dancing, just to make it clear for people in the definition of fusion dance. Fusion dance is not just you using a cultural dance and putting it with other music and then finding the musical syncopation and just making it work. That's not what fusion dance is. Fusion dance is actually knowing the cultures of two different things, conglomerating them together to find the equilibrium balance to be able to pay homage and respect to both of them. So with that being said, I think that when I think of fusion dancers dancing, I don't see a lot of them doing it right. I see a lot of them just doing a style of dance to a different style of music. But in retrospect, every style of music has its own rules. So with that being said, you would be crazy to do a fusion dance and start rolling on the floor in an Egyptian piece, So with that being said, a lot of people, they just are not really educated with the culture going into it. Moving forward, if you are going to be doing fusion dance, educate yourself on the things that need to be educated on so that you could be able to find that fine balance. With the belly dancing community, essentially, this whole culture is about love. If you step into a room and you're doing these things and you're performing, your performance is not only when you're on the dance floor, your performance is everywhere you go. You should be in an infectious love. And that's how the community changes. It changes and it changes from those perspectives. The cultural thing, their culture is not just a dance, it's a lifestyle. So we're stepping into that. And with that being said, that should not be a facade, and it should not be something that should be just on stage where we play a part. It's a lifestyle choice. We're stepping into a cultural thing where we are paying respect and homage to a group of people who have this agape love, unconditional love for their people and for Allah or for whoever it is. So at the end of the day, with me, I would say, in piggybacking with Tariq, the spirituality is a huge thing. And the spirit does not only lie on the dance floor, it lies backstage, how you talk to other dancers. It's how you talk to the productionist. It's how you guys are talking to each other on your downtime. It's a lifestyle choice. So with that being said, being a belly dancer has a more responsibility than what people think. It's a
yes.
dance, but it's a culture too.
Right.
Well said.
So to just sort of interject into there, an American learning a foreign dance, you don't know if you don't know. You don't know that you don't know. And if you go to a teacher, an instructor who doesn't know, this is my feeling is this is how it sort of perpetuates. If you're just going by your teacher and she's the only or he's the only instructor for 20 miles, the only person that you ever studied with, what are your feelings about this? If there is some way to, as a student, what would you suggest?
Well,
Go ahead.
well, this isn't anything new. I mean, this has always been the case. For me, what I would do is, like Angelique talked about getting those VHSs, that was really key. And I learned a lot when I started like traveling to Egypt on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
because I would sit and I would just watch, and I wouldn't just watch the professional dancers. I'd watch like the ordinary people when they were just having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And from a technical standpoint, they were not always the best or the most skilled. But what I could see were certain principles. I could see the principle. I could see the body language,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, if this person had better technique, this is what it could look like.
Mm.
So I watched that, and I watched not for the sake of entertainment, but to really learn and to analyze. So
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to shimmy watching videos of Fifi Abdu and watching the Goazi in Luxor, because like I could fake the funk, but when I started paying attention and you seeing those hips do that, I'm like, well, how come it don't look that way when I do it? And I was like, well, because
Right.
you're not using the right muscles, my friend.
Right.
So I had to train myself. If I want my
Right.
body to do that, what do I got to do? And I realized after 10 years of faking the funk, I could only do it this fast because I never trained the muscles. So I was like, okay, that's where I am. We will do it this fast. But after a while, the muscles get stronger, and then you work your way up until you can do
Right.
it full speed. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, just really paying attention instead of trying to be entertained or looking for attention, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Right. Right. Great.
But
Thank you.
it's not an easy
Question?
it's not an
Mhm.
easy road, it's
Right.
a challenge.
Yeah.
Can
Tashira, you
I
want?
say something? Oh,
I-
sorry.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. All right. I heard Tashira first. I'm so sorry, and then Naja will take you straight afterwards.
I just wanted to ask Tariq a quick question, because I did come up at the golden age of dance in the 70s and 80s in this country, and there were so many places to dance. Everybody had live music. There was always a band. The dancers often sat up on the dais, on the bandstand, and played in between. So we had opportunities that dancers don't have today. And it's really sad that even when many of us will try and bring in an Arabic band now, dancers, because they don't know, are terrified. They want to dance to their CD where they know every tick tock And the sad part is that so many of the musicians have gone away. You can't even find them anymore. I wanted to know if you see that in Cairo as well. Have musicians basically been replaced by canned music?
Okay, so I haven't been to Egypt since 2009. The shows that I did see the last time I was there, they did have a real band. I went to the Maxime boat. I went a couple of other places, and I went to this real dicey, shabby style cabaret in Sharm el Sheikh. They had a live band. But then at the Arabian Nights, attraction, the music was all canned. So it depends on the venue. I think in the upscale, venues and like some of the cabarets, yeah, you still have live music. But now what's becoming popular, from what I understand, is like Western style nightclub kind of environment, and there it's definitely canned music.
Wow. Okay.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. So, Naja, you wanted to ask another question?
I didn't want to ask another question, but I wanted to piggyback on what Sarha was talking about, dancing fusion. And this comes at a good time because we're talking about music, canned music, and live music. I think that particularly with fusion dancers, you really need to know what you're dancing to. If the music has lyrics, understand what those lyrics are. Understand that if you're dancing to something that could be considered a call to prayer, it's disrespectful. Also, you want to make sure that music, the lyrics are not talking about, a government or a governmental issue, because that might cause a problem. Very important when you're dancing fusion, that you know exactly what you're dancing to. Take that extra step and find out what the lyrics are. Find out even the language, because sometimes there's some languages that you think you know what they're talking about because you hear certain words repeat. You want to make sure.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you all. We're going to continue on, and Maria Naja, you are the next person. So, give me one moment here, and I will put you up there right next to me. There she is. Hello. Okay, I'm getting good at this. This is great. Okay. So tell me, you alluded to this earlier, but what prompted the name change for your style of music? Sorry, your style of dance.
Well, a few years back, Donna Mejia, who is, I think everybody from here has heard of her, professor of dance and dance studies at Colorado at Boulder, wrote a paper about cultural appropriation and the use of certain words in our community. Basically, the words were tribal, gypsy, Romany, and how it can be considered disrespectful to the people who are of those backgrounds. As you know, ATS stands for American Tribal Style. It is a creation from America. It is a fusion of different dances from all over the world. But that word tribal was causing a problem. So last year, 2020, during our convention, our ATS reunion, which is now just called Reunion, it was discussed among other topics. And later on that year, our creator out of San Francisco Carolina Norecchio, decided that the word tribal wasn't going to be used and everything was going to be rebranded as Fat Chance Belly Dance, which is the name of the original troupe where the genre started from.
Okay.
It It is a global change. It affected the franchise, which is over 300 different groups, official groups that are part of the group, and all the offsprings from that. I particularly like the term global group improv because we still have an element of global dance, being it's a fusion. It is group dancing, although in the last few years, you've seen a lot of introduction to soloists, and it is improv. I want to say 95% of it is improv. So I like that term global group improv to describe our genre these days.
So, so picking up on that, I have, I guess, a two-part question. How do you feel this effect is going to make on other troops? And, well, actually, let's leave it at that, and then I'll ask you the question afterwards. How do you feel it's going to affect other troops? Do you feel that they'll go along, or they're so embedded to their name that they just won't change? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends on the individual. Some groups have gone ahead and changed their names. And I've chosen to keep Tribe Hamza, and for personal reasons. But I think that going forward, I think the words tribal and the terms gypsy and Romani and some others around that same terminology, people are going to think twice about using that in their descriptions, using that as part of their bios and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, whenever I'm asked to perform as part of the bio, I don't say I'm a belly dancer. I say that I'm an entertainer. Because when you say belly dance, your brain goes to a certain kind of genre. And rather than be in a position where I need to explain what it is, it just makes more sense to say, this is what I do, and watch the video so you can understand it.
Right, right. Well, I think a lot of us have that perception that they end up going against. For example, once I was at a shop and buying costumes, and the shop owner says, "Oh, we've got these great pasties. You're gonna love them. You can use them in your dance." I'm like, "No, that's not what I do." So I think a lot of people, a lot of us in the dance world end up coming across that. My follow-up question basically was going to be appropriation, and to you, what does that look like in our community?
I think there has to be some kind of division or line that you don't cross. And I think that being respectful to the communities and countries where we are enhancing or adding it to our dance, we need to make sure that we are using it in the appropriate way. One of the things, and I'll give you an example, last summer or the summer before, wow, in 2019, my troupe performed for a small hafla, and we did a North African number. And we used harkus, the tribal markings, as part of the costuming. And we made sure that our tribal markings were for North Africa. And after the performance, we were called over and were basically told that we used the right markings in the right places, and it made a difference. Mm-hmm. Because just because you're putting markings on your face doesn't mean, and it looks cool, doesn't mean you're using them in the right way. Mm-hmm. So being respectful also with the costuming, our costuming comes from everywhere. The first thing that in street festivals and what have you, people ask us, well, what country do you represent? What country is this? And it's everything. It's everywhere. And you have to be able, especially I feel in our genre, you have to be able to express that. You need to be able to explain that to people. Well, my necklace came from Yemen. my flowers represent this, and all these type of things. I think it's important that people understand that.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to weigh in on these questions of appropriation or name changes or? Okay. We're just going to go on then. Thank you very much. Oh,
That's a hot potato.
that is an extremely hot potato, isn't it? But it's a hot potato that definitely has to be handled, or else.
That is very true. I'm just
Right.
looking at the clock here.
Okay. All right. So LiliRosa is going to be next, and I'm sorry. 1 second.
You can hear me, yes?
Audie,
Yes.
really quickly,
Yes.
from the phone conversation.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have to go and jump into this rehearsal, but I really, really am super, super thankful for this. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, the panelists, for sharing your thoughts with me. Honestly, as a new generation and as a younger person in this panel, it does not go unnoticed, every word that you guys do say. And thank you so much for everybody who has came. So I apologize, LiliRosa, but I just wanted to say that I love you guys so much, and I hope that this continues to succeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. LiliRosa. Hello, how are you?
Hello, darling.
Hey. Okay, so jumping right in, your first question. Actually, since we're on hot topics already, I'm just gonna.
Oh boy.
Why not?
Just get
Why
right
not?
to it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go for the jugular.
What are your thoughts on this statement? Ageism, racism, and body shaming has been a mainstay of the belly dance history, always insisting that dancers were young, slender, and fair-skinned women.
That's a loaded question. That's such a fully loaded question.
I know.
All right, so wow. It seems as though in the X amount of years that I've been shimmying, Tashira, Tarik, Naja, and I'm sure Angelique, with her sharing of stories as well, can all validate that, as what you're saying could be interpreted as true. There's an ism for everything. There's an ism for going to school. There's an ism for going to the bathrooms. There's an ism for birth certificates now. There were so many isms when I first started, which I tried to use to my advantage, quite frankly. I think that isms are there as points of reference and opportunities to learn. So with that being said, I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And I think that as long as there are people like myself who kind of just keep going against the grain, regardless of who's around you, the isms will slowly continue to break down, as Sarha is, also promoting. So yeah, that's what I have to say to that.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So tying into that, do you feel that people of color, dancers of color, have a more difficult time establishing a professional career?
Before we go on, I also want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for having this event, this panel. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, because it's breaking and bridging the isms. And for those of us who know and those who don't know, we're all, allowed to learn from each other. I'm learning from everyone here, and hopefully you'll learn a little something from me as well. Our experiences are really our wealth, and the basis of who we are. And so thank you for allowing us to shine and share who we are and what we are, what we're about with you and with each other. This is like so important, especially now.
Yes.
So I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet, but I can't do that. So with this question, because I'll tell you why, because 2020/21, yes, it has been challenging. We've lost people, we've seen people come out of things, I've come out of things, you know, it's been a rough ride, but it's been an amazing ride. It's been a challenging ride that has gotten us to a place where that grit really means something. And we've got we've got bluer skies and greener grass and cleaner air for it. And hopefully, I mean, I know someone was sharing earlier that they hadn't been out in a while. I've been at the beach more often than most. I mean, I try to get out almost every day if I can. Hopefully you're experiencing some closeness with friends and family members that you haven't experienced. I had a friend call me who I haven't spoken with in 25 years. She looked me up. I don't know how she found me. But, you know, with that being said, okay, back to the racism question. So you can look at me and see that I don't look like everyone else. When I started dancing, I never looked like anyone else. In fact, not only was I this color and I'm quite tall, but I was about 100 pounds heavier, which put me in a place of not dancing in restaurants and not being one to be highlighted for so many other reasons. And with that being said, my juiciness turned into such a blessing because of the way I saw it. I saw myself so different from everyone else, and my background, everything, you know, everything that I had to offer was different. So what did I do? I marketed the hell out of it, right? I got myself going. I got those big, you know, sides to me, all dressed up, the front and back, everything from top to bottom, everything matched and glitter and this and that. And you know what? On a big card, because I had a man ask me, "Where's your card?" And I said, "Here's my card." And he goes, "This is a big card." I said, "Look at me. Is there anything small about me? Everything has to be big, okay?" And my first website, the man who revamped it, he goes, "Oh my God, everything with you is go big or go home." And I said, "Yeah, I guess that should be my motto." So in other words, yes, I've had dancers throw bottles on the floor so that I could cut my feet. I've had, you know, I've had what I would consider a run of the gamut. Where I have seen the most challenges as a performer, as a director, a teacher, whatever, as those experiences were as a studio owner. Believe it or not, that's where I had the most sticky part of life, because for what it's worth, I've received nothing but love and appreciation with from people of all races, all colors, all ages. I really cannot speak highly enough about the people who, and most of you who I have worked with, right? As a dance studio owner and a teacher there, whew, I've got stories. I mean, I've had couples walk in, I had multi-genre classes going on. So at the time, so when dancers would come in for ballroom and someone would ask, "Who's that?" And an employee would say, "That's the owner." That would be the last time they came in, or they wouldn't, you know, say hello. Like, just weird things happen. But what did I do? So then I started having my events at the studio, and I started bringing all my family members in, and they were very different colors. So it was a lot of fun. You can imagine the fun that we had, right? Just to make it known that what you're doing isn't okay. It's not okay. And as a dance studio owner and a teacher, a troupe teacher, I've had teachers even come in. They bring in their coffee and their food, and I mean, this isn't a Subway. We don't have food in a dance studio. They will come in unrehearsed and think that they could be on stage the next day. No, you know, those are things that really taught me that I needed to learn boundaries, that I needed to learn boundaries and set them, regardless of race or color or creed, etc. So yes, if I had tried to, as a 225-pound woman, try to dance in I don't know, nightclubs, yeah, I'm sure I would have received quite a few, you know, dirty looks, racism, fatism, bigism, all the things that I was and made the most of. And guess what? They worked, okay? Because at some point you have to say to yourself, you know what? If you don't like what you see, somebody else will. So yes, the isms are there. They're whatever you want to call them. But I do, again, I do see them as a point of reference for learning, for sharing, for opportunities to grow both as people and as hopefully as groups of people, right? Because what you learn and teach goes on to others around us. And so with that being said, 2020, 21, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in person. And it's really been a really great experience all around. Being that I have created my own way in so many areas, you know, I like to think that hopefully, and I've been blessed to say that I've had younger dancers say to me, "Oh, LiliRosa, you know, I'm so glad, you know, it's nice to see that I could carry your torch, or that I'm gonna move on with what you did." I mean, because I'm old, you know, I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired. So the ageism too, the old lady. But you know, with that and all, it's so wonderful to say that I did all these things that I did, because there are teachers who belittled me who are still doing the same thing, who are, you know, and hopefully they're belittling someone else who's just like me and will say, you know what, I'm going to teach you. You know, you're gonna eat those words.
Wow.
So
such a wonderful way of turning lemon into lemonade, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right, I get it. The time.
No. Well, I just want to give. I know we want to wrap up at 4:30, so I want to give anyone else on the panel a chance to weigh in on that. The isms.
I definitely felt that starting out.
Mm.
I definitely felt that starting out. I was always pictured as the Black girl from Manhattan Tribal. Didn't matter who I was, where I came from. I didn't look like anybody else. I was almost one of the shortest ones. I was definitely the heaviest and definitely the darkest. But it made me stand out.
One of the things that I've tried to get across to everyone is that, you know, like they said, we don't look like everyone else. But the real truth of the matter is, when you look at the real level of dance, the social dance, we do look like everyone else. It's just that commercial aspect
exactly
becomes so restrictive.
Exactly.
You know? And the other thing that I take from, you know, what LiliRosa had to share with us is the fact that in the diaspora, right, we've always had to create our own spaces. And I think we need to not feel so bad about that. You know, we need to own it and then, you know, expand on it, right? Even within the mainstream, right, there's limitations. I mean, even when I had my own niche, there were certain restrictions that I felt because I had to fit in a certain commercial mold, even down to the kind of music that I chose to perform to. You know, if I tried to put on Kulthum or something classical, it's like, and I'm talking like, you know, all Arabic speaking audience, it's like you see the eyes start glazing over. But if we take control of the venue, you know, like we create our own event, you know, within a space, professional level, where we have people from the dance community as well as the general public, that's an opportunity to expand their minds and to educate.
Mhm.
So we're moving beyond your limited expectations, and I don't have to do what the owner wants me to do because I'm running the show.
Right.
And that's something we pass on to the next generation. We
Right.
create opportunities.
And that's something that has been one of the very best things that I think, with so much help that I've been able to do as a producer or director, as you will, of those international festivals in Central Queens, is that getting groups of people who don't fit in on a with professional instructors has been so rewarding for both parties, for both sides. And it's been nothing but positivity. I think that what Tarik is saying, as far as, building it even more and more, I mean, it's such a wonderful idea. It's such a great thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you both
take
for your input
advantage of
there.
that.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to move on to our next panelist here, and we have Angelique. And so Angelique, I'm so glad you didn't run away at the last couple of questions. They were pretty heated, so I'm not going to ask you.
Oh.
Okay, great. Okay, so your first question: how do you feel that 2020 has changed the way classes and workshops will be held in the future, even after the pandemic is quote unquote over?
So I think that, going forward, decades from now, people will talk about, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I think it's going to be, similar to Industrial Revolution, style mental changes. And I remember when this first went down. So I like to watch sci-fi, and I knew this was going to take a while. No one wanted to believe me, but I was like, we're here for a minute. And people kept saying, oh, I can't wait until, this is over. Let's just flatten the curve and this will be over. And when we first moved to Zoom classes, I think that there was a sense of newness and a sense of, hey, look what we're doing now. It was kind of a shiny new toy in a dark time. And I think that a lot of people were looking for connection, and they were looking for a replacement of what they had gotten out of the community of their weekly classes. And as we all know, in a short matter of time, Zoom fatigue set in, right? And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. And I think, I know for myself personally, the way that I teach on Zoom is very different than the way that I teach in person. And I think when we first started that, people were trying to duplicate what they already had. And that wasn't going to happen, right? And so I think that as time has gone on, as 2020 has gone on, I think people have gotten better at understanding how to communicate through a computer screen. I think people have gotten better at learning how to receive information from a computer screen. And again, I am an eternal optimist. And I think that there have been some really beautiful moments that have come out of this, if nothing else, in the fact that we get to study with all of these amazing dancers that we otherwise wouldn't be able to, right? And so while I don't think that there is a replacement for in-person classes, I know that I love my Zoom classes. I mean, I love them. I love my students. I've got students from all over the world. And I think that they would attest to the fact that it really does. It's a different type of community, but we have fostered a community. And so I know for me personally, I will never stop teaching on Zoom. I'll do the in-person classes as well, because of course you have to, right? There's just some things that can't be taken care of over Zoom. But I really do think that it's been a wonderful kind of push off the ledge that we all just went through. And, you know, I think it's here to stay. I think it's here to stay. And I think over, you know, certainly we've learned a lot over the past year. And I think over the next few years, right, we'll just continue to get better. The technology will get better, and the expectation. Like, so for example, my kids, they have no problem, right, being in front of the computer and learning. I think that it's a particular generation, right, that couldn't bridge that gap. But I think going forward, it's going to be much easier for people.
That's interesting that you're saying that, because when I first, when COVID shutdown just started, I had like 4 classes going a week. Yeah. And then when I went, everything shut down and I went on to Zoom. And I had a bunch of people were saying, you know what, I'll come in again when it's all over.
Yeah.
I can't deal with online. I can't do online. It's not the same. So what do you say to that question? It's not the same.
It isn't. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? You know, for my classes at the end, and I should not be saying this out loud because I can't believe I'm doing it, but I've been filming my combos every week. Right. And now you get my combo that you can now practice for the end of the week. And I will not ever do that in my regular weekly classes. Right. Mm-hmm. So again, there's always all of these, you know, little, you know, silver linings, but it isn't the same. And so here's the thing. I think that, right, it takes one skill to be a good dancer. Mm-hmm. And it takes a different skill to be a good teacher, right? Mm-hmm. And as we found out, it takes an entirely different skill to be a good teacher on Zoom. So sometimes I think that just might not be a skill for everybody, and that's okay, right? Or maybe it's a learned skill, right? And I'm speaking about that both from a teacher and a student perspective. But unfortunately, you know, I think that there is going to be an age divide about who is more receptive towards, you know, learning on a computer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So my follow-up question actually is sort of going in another vein, but I would like to get input from the other panelists before I let you go on that same topic.
Can I just say something? 100% agree with Angelique, because as a generational challenge, I think the first time I was even asked to perform at an online Zoom hafla, I have to tell you, it was abjectly terrifying. In fact, I backed out. I was so afraid. I couldn't imagine dancing in front of a little red eyeball and wondering how that would come across. And of course, the younger generation have no fear of that. It's, you know, it's wonderful. So it's definitely a challenge. It's because in your brain, you think you're one age, your body knows that you're something else, but it's still fun. It's not the best, but it's good. You still get to, you know, to see your dancers. You still get to work out every day. You do get to meet people from across the world that you never would have an opportunity. So if you're one of those older people like me and you were fearful, talk to the Angeliques and the Audies of the world, and they will guide you through it, and you too can do it.
Well, listen, you know, I will help anybody. I will guide anybody. Let me just say, because I think there's some confusion sometimes. I'm almost 50. Right. So you know, because I have a computer science degree, I was pretty tech savvy. But sometimes I think people don't realize some of my life's history lessons. But the other thing that I wanted to mention based off of what you said, it had reminded me, because I was thinking about this, is one of the really beautiful things that I've seen come from this is when we first started doing the haflas, the online haflas, it was a little, it didn't make me, I did not get the warm fuzzies, right? It was a little bit flat, right? And I think that's an area where we have the most potential for growth, because I've been watching some people are really getting the hang of this. And some people, it's like, again, I'm going to date myself. It's like when MTV came onto the scene, right? Whereas before, prior to MTV, it was about the music. Then once MTV came on, it was about the music and the video, right? And so now I'm starting to watch some dancers who are able to kind of create almost like a music video of what they're trying to convey. And that gives them so many more tools and artistic opportunities to be able to connect, right? So I think that's another interesting avenue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is, and I'm so sorry, I'm spicy and I have a lot to say. So you just tell me to stop if I need to stop. But now, oh, I got so sidetracked with me being spicy that I forgot what I was going to say now.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Yeah.
While you think about that?
It'll come back to you. Go ahead, Naja.
Oh, no, I forgot.
See, it happened. It happened.
See like where technology is going to go. I mean, I'm like thinking, could we get to a place where we do like AR, you know?
Wow.
You know, like that's, I mean, seriously, right? You're in this AR environment and, you know, you can see like the students, they can see you and, you know, like.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I did a couple of haflas, online haflas a few weeks ago. I won't say which ones they are because I don't want the instructor, the organizer to be annoyed with me, but I videotaped myself performing and I sent the same performance to 2 different places happening on the same day. And I'm sitting at home and I'm performing in 2 different places, fully dressed. I'm home in my pajamas, but you know, I'm just sort of out there. So yeah, it can open up a lot of different things for us.
I remember what I had to say now.
Okay, go ahead.
And I kind of want to say it's almost the dark side of the whole video pandemic thing, is that now we are saturated with so many classes from so many different genres. It is hard to keep your students coming regularly because they were on with so-and-so, 2 hours ago from Europe or whatever the case may be. Right. Their classes being given and provided at hours that weren't regularly traditionally given. So there are more opportunities to take classes, but in turn, that could also be a lot of competition.
Right. So we're back to how to stand out, how to make your mark. So almost like the beginning of your career.
And also you have that whole Zoom overload. That workshops and what have you from teachers that you wouldn't be able to see physically, you now can take classes with in your own home, while the local person is there, or I can always go to that local person when everything opens up. But then you have all these other workshops and what have you that are happening worldwide. It's a great thing, but it's also challenging.
So we really have so many opportunities to learn, right? How to recreate or repackage ourselves in this new era, regardless of how big or small of a percentage Zoom takes up. Like there's a whole nother market that we have room to grow in, which is awesome.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my questions and I'm looking at the clock, and I did want to get one more question in, and this is thank you, Angelique, first off. Before I unpin you, I didn't want to just unceremoniously toss you aside there, but I did want to open this up to everyone. Okay, so going forward, we talked about the general public, we talked about our community, and venues going forward. What types of venues do you think is going to help grow, nurture, expand the belly dance genre, specifically to the general public? Not necessarily to students, but to the general public. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to jump in and open it up. I think one of the best ways that I find to open up the genre to public is to dance in areas where are outside of the belly dance community. If you get into a street fair, a cultural arts program, best way to provide exposure for your genre, for your troupe, and to the general public. If you can get on local TV, a lot of the towns have their own stations and what have you. If you get on those, I guess, what are they called? CCTV kind of channel, community network channels, and get in on a segment like that. Those are ways to provide exposure to your audience to an audience that you wouldn't get in the community, within the belly dance community.
Anyone else thoughts? No.
I have a thought that,
yes.
Hold on. Okay, I have a thought that kind of piggybacks. It's actually in relation to one of my prior lost thought. And I see that Kim Leary had actually kind of hit on this as well, about the overhead of a studio space to manage. And I found in 2020, we've had to do it all. Right. And in 2020, we've now had to be the videographer and the photographer and the marketer and if you have a studio, keeping those bills paid. And that is actually one of my concerns now, is that there's just so much. I know that I personally feel so overwhelmed with, well, how can I create my lesson plans, keep up my own training, right? Get my name out there and wear all of these different hats and try to do it well. And you can, it's burnout zone. It's burnout zone. So that is my one concern about all of us going forward, because I know that I'm not alone in that thought process.
Reach.
So yeah, so I mean, I don't have the answer to that because right now I'm in the middle of it, but that's my concern.
So I think that's one of the things that some students don't quite get, because they're sort of coming from a student side, is that as a performer instructor, you are not only learning your craft, but you're learning how to teach, you're managing your business, your personal business, the studio business, working with your students, managing your troops if you have a troop, and then there's just job upon job upon job that you have to like really manage, just to sort of keep afloat, really, and to keep your name out there.
Yeah.
I think
so. Just looking at the questions now, a lot of great feedback so far. It seems like everybody's really one thing about about studios and studio space, and I had a sort of a question on this also, is with studio owners, how are you maintaining your businesses during lockdown?
I have provided the space to the teachers to stream their classes live from the studio. So the technology is in the studio where there's a camera set up, there's a screen where they can see the students, and the sound and everything is already provided, for them. So they have a feeling that they're in the studio. Also gives the students a feeling of being in the studio, and when they come back to the studio, it's the same environment. So I think that's a big plus, and that model seems to be working. So hopefully it will going forward.
Right. I just wanted to jump in. There was a comment more than a question. Someone mentions that 75% of their studio owning friends have closed during the pandemic. And I can attest that to that. Two of the studios that I'd worked in the last year closed their doors. And the other two are just sort of on half. They're hopefully they're going to make it through, but you know, it's not 100%. Does anybody else want to talk to that question of studio and maintaining your classes? Even if you're not a studio owner, just maintaining your classes. Who of you have taught more classes since the pandemic then? Yeah.
So actually, it's been really interesting because I've been offering really free classes, and also from those classes, I've had students offer me gigs online. So it's really turned out to be a very twisted blessing, but one nonetheless. I'm not saying no to it, believe me.
Right.
It's been interesting. The classes for me, it's very different. My storefront studio closed due to family reasons. You know, like I had a whole lot going on at home that I just couldn't spread myself any thinner. So Angelique's story is very familiar to me. But I did create a studio here, and so it's been a time to have more classes, but the classes have been less expensive. I've had lots of free classes just because I know that people need to stay up. But as far as losing or having fewer students, the only time that I've found that to be true is, you know, someone will be honest with me and say here and there, oh, you know, I just don't have the money. So I think that that's probably playing a huge factor in why the classes are more scant. But for those who, you know, it really hasn't affected, there are people working at home, they don't mind hiring you online, and I don't mind saying yes. So, you know, yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, so, oh, sorry.
I'm teaching more classes than I had been in the past few years, because when I went back to school, I had to practically give up all of my dance classes except for two. And now I'm teaching several times during the week, like 4 times during the week. I have 4 classes, and I also have a free class that I teach through the Jersey City Free Public Library. And those are like on Mondays and Thursdays at noon. But people can go on their website and they can see the classes, even if they weren't there to see them, you know, being live streamed on Facebook or the website. And I think social media is an opportunity that we have for bringing the dance to a wider public, you know?
Right.
We can show them, and you know, it doesn't just have to be dance, but give a little bit of explanation so that they know what it is. And I try to do that with my free classes, you know.
Right. That's great. That's great. So, yeah, we're going to start wrapping it up. I do have one quick question for the panelists. I'll give you a second just to think about your answer as I start wrapping it up with the audience. And the quick question for the panelists is, what will be the hot new, oh, how do I want to say this? The hot new prop for dancing in 2021. Okay, so just think about that for a second. I mean, we've been through boas to veils to finger cymbals to dancing on top of wine glasses. Something is going to come out of 2020 that's going to be big in 2021. So while you all are thinking about that, I want to just say thank you to everyone who has has attended. So thank you for your questions. If you registered with an email, I will be sending out all of the panelists' contact informations and things on what they have coming up next. And yeah, that's it. So why don't we start with Angelique? Angelique, what is going to be the hot new prop for 2021?
I'm gonna cheat my way on this one because I don't have a good answer, but I really do like Diana's. And she said, not a prop, but pets must participate in every virtual performance. Because let me tell you something, watching pets run through the room during my classes is the best part of my day. Best part.
Hysterical. Toilet paper, someone says. Oh, okay. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that. Bounce it on our heads, maybe. LiliRosa, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I have to second that because this guy right here, he runs everything. So I agree 900%. It's all about the cats and dogs and hamsters or whatever you have at home.
Tarik, what are your thoughts?
Everybody's gonna dance with hookahs.
I'm sorry?
Everybody's gonna balance.
Okay. Naja.
I think you're going to see more performances outdoors, in the parks, at the beaches, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that. And Tashira, what are your thoughts? Oh, wait, we can't hear you. Hold on, hold on. You are muted.
I think that people will be coming out with baskets of snakes. They dance with snakes now. They dance with baskets. They're going to put the snakes in the baskets. And there you go. That will be a prop. It'll be one way to make sure people don't come too close to you.
Oh, there you go. Great, great. Well, thank you all so much. And I hope the attendees had a great time.